It's the age of sequels, of ants, and of going to space. In other words, it's the second phase in our MCU crash course. Last time, we talked about Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the 124-hour-long collection of interconnected films that started the Infinity Saga. In it, tech mogul Tony Stark builds a metal suit of armor and becomes Iron Man. Bruce Banner gets injected with a failed Captain America serum that turns him into the Hulk whenever he gets angry. Tony's army friend James Rhodes can pilot an Iron Man suit now, and Natasha Romanoff is a skilled fighter named the Black Widow. Thor, son of Odin and next in line to rule Asgard, is the god of thunder, in love with scientist Jane Foster. Captain America was given a super soldier serum and fought in World War II before waking up in modern-day New York, where S.H.I.E.L.D. director Nick Fury assembled the Avengers to protect Earth from Thor's brother Loki and the army of someone who doesn't appear to be done fighting. Now, we continue the Infinity Saga with Phase 2. Making up Phase 2 is Iron Man 3, Thor: The Dark World, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers: Age of Ultron, and Ant-Man. First up, Iron Man 3. At a New Year's Eve party in 1999, Tony Stark meets all the scientists. First, a scientist named Maya Hansen, who invented Extremis, which may be able to regrow limbs lost to injury. He also meets a scientist named Jensen, who he promptly forgets before Jensen saves his life in a cave a decade later. Plus, he meets a scientist, Aldrich Killian, who Tony says he'll meet on the roof later, but then doesn't. This is the beginning of Killian's villain origin story. We find out that, in a slight problem, the limbs that Extremis regrows have a tendency to explode. Meanwhile, Tony's experience of fighting aliens in the Avengers has given him frequent panic attacks that led him to create a bunch of new Iron Man suits, something that his assistant/girlfriend, Pepper, isn't a huge fan of. The terrorist group leader, the Mandarin, has been bombing a string of targets, and Pepper sees the Extremis technology firsthand, learning that it might be able to recode DNA. This freaks her out, and she decides not to look into it further. Happy Hogan, though, decides to follow Killian's co-worker to find out more and gets into a fight that knocks him unconscious. He'll be okay. But, in response, Tony sends out a threat to the Mandarin, and the Mandarin blows up Tony's house. The world thinks he's dead, but he's really stranded in Tennessee. With the help of a kid named Harley, Tony investigates the Mandarin's activity and breaks into his headquarters, only to find that the menacing Mandarin is actually an actor named Trevor. The real Mandarin is Aldrich Killian, who has decided to take over Rhodey's Iron Man suit to kidnap the president. After a daring rescue where Pepper falls to her death, but is actually fine, Tony destroys every single one of his Iron Man suits. In a post-credits scene, we discover that this whole movie was Tony talking to Bruce Banner, who fell asleep during the story. Next, in Thor: The Dark World, some dark elves try to take over the universe by using a mysterious force called the Ether to open portals between all 9 realms. Their leader, Malekith, leads a battle with the Asgardians for control, but the Asgardians get the Ether and put it in safekeeping. Later, Loki is sentenced to life in prison for his actions in the Avengers, and Thor is promised the title of king someday. Thor, renowned in Asgard for his heroic actions, still misses Earth's Jane Foster that he's fallen in love with, which his father Odin doesn't approve of. Speaking of, Jane is in London, investigating some unknown readings that turn out to be caused by portals between worlds, one of which brings her to a strange void, where the Ether takes over her body and brings her back to Earth. Thor arrives on Earth to check on her, and they reunite, and go together back to Asgard. At first, Odin is upset that Thor brought her, but agrees to help when he realizes that she has the Ether. Meanwhile, Malekith and the Dark Elves attack Asgard in a massive battle, where the Dark Elves kill Thor's mom, and Thor shoots lightning at Malekith, forcing them all to retreat. Looking for revenge, Odin locks up Jane to lure Malekith back, but Thor frees Loki from jail to help bring Jane back to safety. Malekith confronts them, and Loki betrays Thor, cutting off his hand and surrendering Jane to Malekith. Malekith transfers the Ether to him, but what's this? Loki's betrayal wasn't actually betrayal. Thor is fine, summons Mjolnir, and can't destroy the Ether. They fight for control, and Loki dies just after apologizing for what he's done. Finding a portal, Thor and Jane travel back to London, where Selvig tells them that Malekith is likely trying to spread the ether through those portals to destroy every single world at once. Thor and Malekith battle through different portals, while the scientists use some devices to try to stop him permanently. Thor impales Malekith and returns to Asgard, where Odin congratulates him and tells him that he will be a great king. Thor, though, says he's not ready for that, and walks away. As he does, Odin transforms. He's actually Loki, ruling Asgard in disguise. The ether is given to the Collector, who says, 1 down, 5 to go. In Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Steve Rogers has started working for S.H.I.E.L.D. and goes on runs with Sam Wilson, who used to work in the Air Force. Steve goes on a mission with Natasha Romanoff, but she disappears partway through on a secret side mission from Director Fury to extract some S.H.I.E.L.D. info that had been compromised. Steve is upset that Fury lied to him, so Fury tells him about the initiative to create the next generation of helicarriers to protect citizens from the air. Steve, though, doesn't see this as protection, but intimidation. Fury realizes he can't access the data Natasha extracted and asks Alexander Pierce to delay the helicarrier project. While driving to meet Agent Hill, he's attacked by assassins and barely escapes into the sewers. Fury visits Steve's apartment and tells him that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been compromised. The assassin from earlier shoots Fury, who gives Steve the information on a USB drive, tells him not to trust anyone, and falls unconscious. Steve and his neighbor, actually a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent monitoring him, chase the assassin, and Steve throws the shield at him, and he catches it with his cybernetic arm and throws it back before disappearing. Meanwhile, doctors can't save Fury, and he dies. Steve is told that he's needed for a S.H.I.E.L.D. meeting, so he hides the USB in a vending machine at the hospital and gets questioned by Pierce about who killed Fury. Knowing that S.H.I.E.L.D. is corrupted, he doesn't say much and gets in the elevator to leave. Here, he notices a lot of agents surrounding him and realizes that they're trying to capture him. So, he attacks all of them, jumps out of the elevator, and drives away. This, of course, makes him a fugitive. Later, Steve discovers that the USB is gone, and that the assassin is called the Winter Soldier, and is working with Pierce. Steve and Natasha track the origins of the USB drive to a World War II-era S.H.I.E.L.D. base, where the uploaded consciousness of a man named Arnim Zola gives them some information before the base is bombed. They work with Sam Wilson to find out that S.H.I.E.L.D. is planning to use the helicarriers as weapons, and the Winter Soldier attacks them. In the chaos, his mask comes off, and he's Steve's best friend, Bucky Barnes, who he thought died during World War II. The Winter Soldier, though, has no idea who Bucky Barnes is. Our heroes are taken prisoner, but Maria Hill breaks them out and brings them to Fury, who only faked his death. They make a plan to stop the helicarrier launch and save Bucky, if he can be saved. Meanwhile, Bucky starts to slowly remember his progression in the hands of Hydra, and that he was brainwashed. So, Pierce brainwashes him again. The helicarriers take off, but Natasha is able to infiltrate the base, and with the help of Fury, upload the secret files about Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. to the internet. Steve and Sam are able to stop 2 of the 3 helicarriers, but Bucky stops them from getting to the 3rd. Cap and the Winter Soldier fight, and Cap is able to stop the 3rd helicarrier, while Fury kills Pierce. Steve says he's not going to fight Bucky, and passes out, but Bucky saves him from drowning and drags him to safety before disappearing again. When Steve wakes up, S.H.I.E.L.D. is in shambles, Fury is, officially at least, dead, and Natasha testifies in Congress about everything that happened. In these post-credit scenes, Baron Strucker oversees Loki's scepter and 2 prisoners. One who can move objects through the air, and one who can move at superhuman speed. Bucky Barnes, meanwhile, visits a museum exhibit about Captain America and a display about him. Then we travel to space for Guardians of the Galaxy. In this film, a boy named Peter Quill watches his mother die and gets captured by a spaceship. Much later, Peter is part of a group called the Ravagers, led by a man named Yondu, who have been hired to retrieve an orb for their client. Peter, though, doesn't like the Ravagers because they, kidnapped him, so he takes off and steals the orb on his own. In response, Yondu puts out a bounty for anyone who captures him. Ronan the Accuser, a ruthless invader, is also looking for the orb, for Thanos, the same guy behind the Battle of New York in the Avengers, with the help of Gamora and Nebula. Peter tries to sell the orb to a broker, but gets attacked by Gamora, who steals the orb and disappears. The resulting fight brings in bounty hunters Rocket Raccoon and Groot, a tree, who are both after Peter. The police arrest all of them, but they escape along with a new member, Drax the Destroyer. Thanos is unbothered by Gamora's betrayal, since he knows Ronan and Nebula can stop her. or else. Our heroes give the orb to the Collector, who reveals the magic stone inside of it, one of 6 that have the power to control the universe. Our heroes are attacked by Ronan and his forces, and are able to escape, but Gamora is left floating in space. Nebula takes the orb and leaves, while Peter convinces the group to save Gamora before leaving. Peter meets with the Ravagers and forms a truce so they can work together to get the orb back from Ronan, and set off to face him. Gamora tries to get Nebula to join the heroes, but she refuses and escapes. In the chaos, a ship crashes on the planet, but Groot sacrifices himself to protect his teammates from the impact. Then, everyone joins hands to harness the power of the orb's stone and take down Ronan. Peter, though, takes the orb for himself and gives Yondu a fake. Our heroes, now calling themselves the Guardians of the Galaxy, take off, and we see that Groot is slowly starting to regrow. In a post-credits scene, Howard the Duck from the 1980s movie makes fun of the Collector. Then it's time for the second MCU crossover, Avengers: Age of Ultron. Earth's mightiest heroes infiltrate a Hydra base in Sokovia and find the prisoners from the end of Captain America: Winter Soldier, twins Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, capture Strucker, and retrieve Loki's scepter. Finding an AI program in the scepter's stone, Tony Stark and Bruce Banner develop a way to download it into Iron Man suits to try to prevent conflicts before they happen. The AI, though, gains sentience and kills Tony's AI assistant Jarvis to take over a suit and try to kill the Avengers to achieve world peace. Teaming up with the twins, Ultron, the corrupted AI, hacks into banks around the world to buy a bunch of vibranium, an incredibly strong metal that Captain America's shield is made out of. The Avengers battle Ultron and the twins, but Wanda Maximoff gives them all nightmarish vision to subdue them. The Avengers hide out at Hawkeye's house and talk with Dr. Selvig and Nick Fury about what to do next. Meanwhile, Ultron forces a doctor to create a new body for him, but the Maximoffs betray him, and Tony re-uploads Jarvis into the body. Despite this progress, Ultron begins to lift the city of Sokovia into the air with a machine made out of vibranium. Our heroes fight to evacuate the city onto the helicarrier and stop Ultron, but Pietro Maximoff sacrifices himself to save Hawkeye. The city starts to fall back towards the ground, but Tony and Thor are able to destroy it before it gets there. The Hulk, despite having promised to run away with Natasha, flees in a Quinjet, while the new body for Jarvis, named Vision, destroys Ultron once and for all. In the aftermath, the Avengers create a new headquarters, Thor returns to Asgard, Tony and Hawkeye leave the team, and Steve and Natasha train Rhodey, Wanda, Vision, and Sam to take over. But in the post-credits scene, Thanos puts on a giant metal glove and promises to do it himself. This brings us to the final film of Phase 2, Ant-Man. S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Hank Pym, who has created a new shrinking technology, resigns in the 80s after he finds out that Howard Stark is trying to copy it. Eventually, his daughter Hope and student Darren Cross have forced him out of his own company, Pym Technologies. Things get even worse for him when Cross announces his own version of Pym's shrinking technology. Meanwhile, Scott Lang is being released from prison, where he was serving a sentence for theft. His cellmate Lewis and thievery partners Kurt and Dave offer him a new heist, but Scott declines so he can get his life back on track. When he learns that his ex-wife is getting remarried and revoking access to his daughter if he doesn't pay child support, though, he changes his mind. He steals a motorcycle suit and brings it home with him, where he puts it on and shrinks down to the size of an ant. This freaks him out a bit, so he brings it back to where it came from, and he's arrested. Hank Pym, who owned the suit, breaks him out of jail and asks Scott to be the next Ant-Man by stealing Cross's suit. Hope spies on Cross, while Scott has to steal a critical device from an old warehouse that turns out to be the new Avengers headquarters. Scott has to fight Sam Wilson in his Falcon armor, while Hope finds out that her deceased mother worked alongside Hank as the original Ant-Man before falling into the mysterious quantum realm. Scott dons the Ant-Man suit to try to steal Cross's suit, is captured, breaks out, blows the building into the quantum realm, and is arrested. Again, Cross kidnaps Scott's daughter, and Scott fights Cross in ant-sized form until Cross dies from a suit malfunction. Later, Sam Wilson tells Lewis that the Avengers might want to recruit Scott. In some post-credits scenes, Hank shows Hope a prototype Wasp suit, and Sam Wilson and Steve Rogers find Bucky Barnes. Because of the Accords, they can't reach out to Tony Stark, but Sam might know a guy. This is the end of Phase 2, and sets up the next 11 movies in Phase 3, which ends the Infinity Saga. So, to recap the recap. Tony Stark battles PTSD from the Avengers, a serum that regrows limbs and makes them explode, and an actor named Trevor playing the Mandarin, with the help of a kid named Harley. Thor fights off the Dark Elves, and stops them from taking over the 9 realms, and reunites with Jane Foster, while Loki seemingly dies, but actually pretends to be Odin to rule Asgard. Captain America is reunited with a brainwashed Bucky Barnes, makes friends with Sam the Falcon Wilson, and discovers that Hydra has taken over S.H.I.E.L.D., which forced Nick Fury to fake his death and go into hiding. Peter Quill worked with Yondu and a group called the Ravagers after being abducted as a kid, before abandoning them to form the Guardians of the Galaxy, with Gamora, Rocket Raccoon, Drax, and Groot to fight Thanos, Nebula, and Ronan the Accuser. The Avengers meet Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, and Tony creates an AI to try to prevent conflicts before they happen. They goes rogue and lifts the city of Sokovia into the air, and Pietro dies. Tony's AI Jarvis is in a body as Vision now, and Tony and Hawkeye retired, leaving Steve and Natasha to train Rhodey, Wanda, Vision, and Sam to take over. Thanos puts on a glove and promises to do it himself. Thief Scott Lang works with former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Hank Pym to don a shrinking suit and become Ant-Man. Hank's daughter Hope has a wasp suit, and Scott might get to join the Avengers. What does the future hold for our band of do-gooders? Stay tuned for the next MCU Crash Course.